completely shake everything you thought you knew. Forget Brian Hooker's old story about his wife accidentally bouncing off a drifting, helpless dinghy. A massive, breaking update from federal investigators has just completely destroyed his entire alibi. The Coast Guard intercepted Brian's sailboat at sea and cracked open the digital data on his green smartwatch. The terrifying reality: the GPS shows his boat was never drifting helplessly in the storm. It was being deliberately steered, tightly circling two specific deep spots in the ocean. Investigators believe he was dropping something heavy to the ocean floor, and federal agents just took DNA from Lynette's family to identify her body the moment dive teams pull her up. Do not skip a single second of this video, because if you miss this new evidence, you miss the exact moment the trap closes on Brian Hooker. Let's move straight toward the evidence. Right where that digital tracking data ends, the real nightmare begins. When the Coast Guard Investigative Service downloaded the files from Brian Hooker's green smartwatch, they weren't just looking at random numbers. They were looking at a literal digital roadmap of a suspected crime scene. Brian swore up and down to the Hopetown volunteer fire and rescue teams that his dinghy was completely dead in the water after the ignition key went overboard with Lynette. He told everyone he was just a passenger to the wind, floating helplessly across the dark sea of Abaco for over 8 agonizing hours before washing up on the shores of Marsh Harbor. But the federal agents found something that completely shatters that tragic husband image. The GPS data proves the dinghy was moving with absolute purpose under steady propulsion. It didn't just float. It traveled directly to two highly specific, isolated coordinates in the open water where the depth drops down. Once the boat reached those exact spots, it didn't drift past them. The digital tracker shows the vessel tightly circling in place, swinging around over and over again as if an anchor had been intentionally dropped to hold it steady against the raging storm. This completely gives the entire case a dark, terrifying new direction. Why would a man who claims he has no engine power and is desperately searching for his drowning wife stop to circle in the deepest parts of the sea? Investigators immediately realized the chilling truth. Brian wasn't floating. He was executing a calculated plan. He was spending precious time at those exact coordinates late at night, perfectly aligning with the deep water zones. But here is where the mystery takes a massive turn that leaves everyone with a chilling question. If Brian's boat was actively powered and steering through the dark, how did he manage to wash up on the shores of Marsh Harbor not just once, but twice that very same morning? The double landing at Marsh Harbor is the exact moment Brian Hooker's entire timeline completely collapses into a web of impossible lies. He told the local police and the desperate rescue volunteers that he drifted aimlessly through the black sludge and thickets, washing ashore at a singular spot where he miraculously escaped. But federal investigators tracking his digital footprints discovered something truly bizarre. The dinghy actually touched land in two completely different locations hours apart on that fateful Easter Sunday morning. If you are truly a stranded mariner with no engine power, floating blindly at the mercy of the crashing ocean waves and changing tides, landing twice in separate spots is a physical impossibility. This means Brian was actively driving that boat, guiding it to a secret first location before moving it to a second, more convenient spot to stage his dramatic rescue. Local rescue experts who know the dangerous terrain of Marsh Harbor say there is absolutely no way a human being could machete their way through the thick, muddy wilderness from his claimed landing spot to the nearby subdivision doors he knocked on. So how did he cross the impassable swamp? Investigators have a terrifying theory that changes everything. They believe Brian engineered a fake trail using a green floating device. He sent the green floaty drifting across the water to see exactly where the current would take it, using his professional white Mariner watch to monitor the path. Then, using a silent, hidden electric motor on his dinghy, he followed that exact line. He landed at the first spot, walked up to the residential neighborhood, and looked for outdoor garbage cans to permanently dispose of Lynette's dry bag containing her passports and the spare keys. But the most shocking piece of physical evidence isn't what Brian threw away in the trash. It is what federal agents noticed was physically missing from his luxury sailboat when they raided it. When federal agents officially locked down Brian Hooker's luxury sailboat, the Soulmate, they immediately turned the entire vessel into an active, high-security crime scene. Yellow forensic tape went up around the deck, and teams of investigators began carrying away box after box of bagged evidence. But what they didn't find on the boat is what truly sent shockwaves through the entire investigation. True crime followers who have been watching this case from the very beginning know that certain heavy maritime items are completely missing from the ship's inventory. Specifically, a heavy spare outboard engine that Brian had recently replaced but kept on board, along with Lynette's personal scuba diving gear. Lynette was an experienced diver, and she always used a highly visible, custom pink buoyancy compensation device alongside a matching pink weight belt. These weights are designed specifically to keep a human body deep underwater. Investigators noticed that both the heavy spare engine and Lynette's pink diving weights are completely gone from the sailboat. The dark theory building behind closed doors is that these heavy items were never lost at sea by accident. Federal agents strongly believe Brian used the heavy spare engine and the specialized diving weights to intentionally anchor Lynette's body to the ocean floor at those exact coordinates where his smartwatch showed him circling. This completely shatters his original story that she simply slipped and bounced off the back of the small dinghy. You don't accidentally fall into the ocean while wearing a heavy diving weight belt and carrying a spare boat motor. This chilling inventory mismatch is exactly why the American government has officially stepped in to take total control of the investigation. The local island authorities are now fully cooperating, allowing U.S. federal dive teams to plunge directly into the dark waters of the Sea of Abaco. But as the underwater search teams prepare to drop into those specific coordinates, a final piece of breaking news proves the noose is tightening around Brian. The final trap is springing shut, and the most emotional development in this entire investigation just occurred behind closed doors. Federal agents recently met with Lynette's grieving mother, father, and daughter to officially collect their DNA samples. This isn't a routine legal procedure. Investigators are gathering this genetic data for one specific, dark reason. They are preparing for a positive identification the exact moment federal dive teams recover Lynette's body from the pinpoint coordinates tracked on that green smartwatch. Brian Hooker thought he was smart enough to outrun the law. He flaunted his large white watch to the public, completely blind to the fact that his green smartwatch was acting as a digital black box tracking his every move. The Coast Guard, Investigative Service, and mobile networks have completely busted his timeline. Now, with the family's DNA ready, the final forensic puzzle is complete. Tick-tock, Brian. The noose is tight, the evidence is ironclad, and the handcuffs are coming next.